level. See, it's in the Meghalaya region, for instance, the Garo tribals, they have a different relationship. When you come to West Bengal, that's a different relationship. When you go to Tripura, it's a different relationship. It's the people from Kumilla and all who during partition just simply moved over to the other side, a short distance, and that's where they are. The families are on both sides of the border. So it's very complex in the case of Bangladesh, and I don't see anything moving without people being at the center of it. They have to be there.
Shahab, if I can turn to you. So we now have a situation in Bangladesh where there is a kind of an interim government. We don't know how long it's going to last. There is no clarity on whether it's there for a couple of weeks, months, years. Some of the statements which we are hearing seem to suggest that, well, they are here for as long as it takes to bring in constitutional and political reforms. But then again, those are going to be reforms which do not enjoy a popular mandate because, it's not an elected government by any stretch of imagination. So that is one situation. You have the army also in Bangladesh, which has played a role in the past. But I would be interested in knowing how effective a force the army is right now in Bangladesh in terms of being able to influence policy and in terms of being able to influence politics in Bangladesh. Does it remain an effective force, or has it been pushed to the sidelines because of the events of the last couple of weeks? What exactly is the situation, the political situation in Bangladesh right now, sir?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to return to ORF virtually, though. I was a regular visitor back in time. I think I would start my answers to your fascinating question with my previous speaker's point of view. Let's talk about two critical concepts here. The first is people. I mean, I agree that Bangladesh-India relationship is complex and extraordinarily versatile and diverse. That means that Bangladesh's relationship with India cannot be only seen through one prism of government to government or business to business or people to people. It's a combination of everything. But the problem remains when Bangladesh is being explained from Delhi. When the question of people comes in. I mean, who are these people that we are talking about? I mean, if you go back to the Awami League regime, the people means those who supported Awami League, and rest of the country was absolutely what I would call pariah. And the result was, the cumulative result was the months of June and July and August, where the government even lost the basic sense to hold political communication with the people they deemed as Razakar or anti-liberation. And henceforth, the rest of the nation came together. Now, the question is whether Delhi understands that part of the story. The 5th of August, repeatedly, we got to see in the Indian media and many of the Twitters, it's all about the minority case. The question is then, where the hell that 700 people who died has gone into the narratives of Delhi and Indian media? And I think that's where the whole problem lies in defining people. The second problem is essentially the government-to-government relationship. I mean, yes, 2009, we had a very rational election. 2014 onward, Mrs. Sujata Singh came to Dhaka, and Daily Star reported that if Jatiya Party is not coming to election, then there will be BNP Jamaat in power. And then 2018 election was wholeheartedly supported by Delhi and Beijing, none other than these two parties, and of course Moscow. And then 2024 comes in, and if you look at November, December, and January reports, Avinash Palikar or anybody in that matter, that Delhi was instrumental in changing Washington's behavior in terms of the election that will come to Bangladesh. So that clearly lays one fundamental problem in front of us, that when we mean that Bangladesh, what Bangladesh is Delhi thinking about? Now, that's one part of the story. The second part of the story, as you have rightly mentioned, that interim government is here for a rational period of time. It will certainly take a long time. I mean, when I mention long term, doesn't mean that 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. I would rather say a reasonable time for them to get their acts together. The interim is not fulfilled yet. There will be few more who will be inducted into the cabinet. And then subsequently, this is the first time in our history when an interim government came where there is no political institutions are functional. I mean, at least 2007 and 8, both the major political parties were existing. Jamaat was existing too. But this time, BNP was in complete disarray. Awami League literally starting from prime minister to imam of the mosques fled away. I mean, literally there's no administration, police existing. I mean, on blink of eyes, we just got to see that there is no police anywhere. So then, obviously, BNP has to get their acts right to become a fully functional political party after 15 years of being in jail. And Jamaat has to get its acts right because essentially they have a huge number of legal issues pending to be resolved. So when interim government came, whenever they're talking about election, the problem is they don't have the political parties ready to think about election. The second problem for the interim government, apart from this fiasco or the vacuum, is the problem of the institutions. I mean, if you look at the intel agencies, largely dysfunctional. As I mentioned, police is dysfunctional. And the judiciary is going through a massive reformation, and for which they certainly need time. Now, the constitutional reform is still debated what form of constitutional reform will come. Now, the question about constitutional reform is the parties have to come together and agree on three principles. What would be the state ideology? Are we going to change? Are we going to keep it? Or are we going to have a new ideological formation as the public demands? The second problem in the constitutional reform is that whether these reforms will reflect public consensus, henceforth the party consensus. I mean, the parties have to come together in this matter. And the third problem is human resources. While we do have reforms, then certainly we will need to have efficient human resources to carry on. And as you see, if you read all the reports that how many cases are being filed on a daily basis on the basis of even simple as corruption. I'm not getting into the killing and genocide and genocidal sprees and so on. So which means this is a fascinating time when the government is struggling to revive the institutions first and then to reform and then to go for constitutional reform. As for your question, what is the role of the military? I mean, military is perhaps, it may sound sarcastic, but certainly I may say that that military is the only democratic party in Bangladesh existing. I mean, the chief of army staff, it's an irony. Chief of army staff didn't take the decision because he is the chief of army staff, or perhaps there was a lot of speculation that he is being related to the former prime minister. Will always stay at tune with the political party's demand, which has not happened. So therefore, the military will act only when the majority of the military officials will agree on the role of the military. So far, they have learned heavily from 1/11, 2007 and 8. I being a regular academic visitor to the National Defense College, I can at least understand that much, that military has learned in a very bad way after 2008 and 9, that it is not their job to go get into the interim government and dictate them. So therefore, I don't see that military will be influencing interim government as such, but certainly if the interim government continues to remain weak in the future and the political parties are not getting their acts right, that is the time when military may, again, the word may, have to rethink their strategies, which is right now stay out of the orbit of the interim government. Thank you.
Follow-up question. You are saying that the political parties are probably not in a position to participate in elections, but at least from the statements from some of the political parties, it seems that they are very keen on early elections. and they are very uncomfortable with the prospect of the interim government, continuing for any length of time or taking decisions of a far-reaching nature, which does not have a popular consensus backing those decisions. Like the BNP wants early elections. I'm sure if elections were to be called in 2 or 3 months' time, every political party would jump into the fray. So I'm a little perplexed by your claim that the parties are not ready and they would also not mind waiting for some time.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the BNP's statements over the past few weeks, it's clear that they want to give the interim government time and reasonable time. And it is very practical for them. Whenever I speak to them, they're pretty clear because that reform and getting the election commission and the electoral bodies to become functional will legitimately take a long time. I mean, they're willing to wait till that. And I think when they mean early election, which I'm not aware of, but when they mean early election is not that you go for indefinite periods like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Rather, at some point of time, you have to give a timeline. And I actually wrote an article last week by saying that it is very important for the interim to come up with a roadmap and essentially lay out what is their timeline or lifespan would be. So I don't think that BNP is in a position to dictate that they will be in the election in 2, 3 months. I don't think that is happening. Rather, what they're saying that they want to give time to interim government to come up with some sort of solution. When it comes to Jamaat, which is even more interesting, Jamaat didn't really come up with a statement by saying that we want an early or late or any time, any sort of time frame. Rather, Jamaat's logical position would be, and which I understand is rational from their point of time too, is to wait and see how the interim government goes and how the interim government functions. So essentially, I think there is an impatience in the grassroots when it comes to the political parties. I mean, we are seeing a little bit of symptom of what we used to see back in time, but not certainly this is the reflection of the party hierarchy. So therefore, I think what I would claim over here with after my regular consultation with different parties is essentially they're willing to give time to interim government, and interim government has to decide. And perhaps the interim government is essentially saying that we will require time that can, some says 3 years, some says 2 years. But again, it depends all on the fluidity of the situation. And most certainly, there is no way we will be seeing any kind of election coming up at least a year from now, at least a year.
If I can turn to you, you've just come from the dangal in Bangladesh and you're going to the dangal in Haryana for whatever that's worth. So thanks that you could join us from the road. I don't know what's happening in the dangal in Haryana, but hopefully it should be a lot more peaceful than the dangal you've come from in Bangladesh. But just walk us through what you saw during your coverage when you went to Bangladesh after the events recently. What exactly were you seeing? What exactly did you hear on the ground?